You know, when we think about school safety, we usually just picture, like, a fire drill.
Right, yeah. The alarm goes off and everyone just moves.
Exactly. Every single person in that building knows exactly which door to walk through. They know exactly where to stand out on the football field.
It's totally predictable.
Yeah, it's this immediate, highly coordinated response to a physical threat.
And those protocols are practically drilled into us from kindergarten,
Yeah.
right? It's standardized across almost every public education facility in the country.
But then, you look at mental health in schools, and suddenly that perfectly organized line out the door just, well, it completely disappears.
It really does.
Like when a student has a panic attack in the cafeteria, or maybe they completely shut down in the middle of a math test, that standardized protocol vanishes. Schools are generally just forced to wing it.
Oh, absolutely. They're usually just scrambling to manage the fallout of a crisis, only after it is spilled over into some kind of behavioral issue. It is the absolute definition of a reactive system.
Wow.
I mean, we wait for the internal struggle to become a visible, disruptive external problem before anyone even thinks to look for an extinguisher.
Which is wild when you think about it. But right now in Georgia, public schools are actually trying to build that mental fire escape.
Yeah, and they're under pressure to do it too.
They really are. They are facing a looming state deadline to get it done. So, for today's deep dive, we are looking at an incredibly thorough breakdown of a program called MentalSpace School.
Right.
This is currently operating within the Georgia public school system, and, it is entirely rethinking how public education and families handle mental health.
It's a huge shift.
It is. I want to be clear to you listening, this is not just about, like, sticking a 1-800 hotline poster on the guidance counselor's door.
Far from it, yeah.
Yeah.
What we are looking at here is a complete structural overhaul. Because if you look at the trajectory of public health, public schools are sort of the ultimate cross-section of our society.
For sure, everyone passes through there.
Exactly. They are the front line. It's where we see every socioeconomic trend, every community issue, and every health crisis play out first.
Right, they catch it all.
They do. So understanding how a model like this attempts to turn a school from just, an academic building into a holistic community care hub, well, it tells us a lot about where the future of healthcare accessibility is heading.
And that matters whether you have kids in the Georgia system or not.
Precisely. It's a blueprint.
Well, accessibility is the perfect place to start, I think, because the two biggest hurdles in mental health care are always time and money.
Always.
And MentalSpace is apparently trying to obliterate both of them. So let's look at the financial side first.
Okay.
They've practically wiped out the financial red tape. They are accepting $0 Medicaid and virtually every major private insurance plan you can think of.
Yeah, Blue Cross, Cigna, Aetna, Humana.
Peach State, CareSource, Amerigroup, yeah, all of them. But the temporal barrier, the time aspect, that's where it gets really interesting to me. They are offering same-day teletherapy.
Oh, the emphasis on same day really cannot be overstated here. I mean, in the traditional mental health care system, wait lists are notoriously destructive.
Right.
Just think about it. Finding a child psychologist who actually takes your specific insurance network.
Which is a nightmare on its own.
Totally. And then they have to happen to be accepting new patients, and they have to have an after-school opening. I mean, that can take months.
And a crisis doesn't just pause for scheduling.
It compounds.
Yeah.
By the time a student actually gets to the top of that wait list 3 months later, the initial anxiety has often spiraled into like depression or chronic absenteeism or severe behavioral issues.
Wow, yeah.
So achieving a same-day turnaround is a massive paradigm shift. And when you pair that rapid response with a $0 Medicaid cost, you are removing the massive socioeconomic filter that typically decides which students get help and which ones just, fall through the cracks.
It's essentially like embedding an urgent care or mental health clinic directly into a student's backpack.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Hold on, though. I do have to push back a little on the format they are using to deliver this.
Sure.
Because the mechanism here is same-day teletherapy.
Right.
You're taking a K-12 kid who might be in the middle of a genuine panic attack or like an emotional meltdown, and you're sticking them in front of a laptop in a school office.
Yeah, I see where you're going.
I mean, teletherapy just feels incredibly clinical for a 10-year-old. How is a screen supposed to provide that necessary human connection in the middle of a crisis?
Well, that is the primary criticism of digital health interventions, especially when we're talking about minors.
Right, because it feels so disconnected.
Exactly. But the program actually mitigates that digital disconnect through a very specific mechanism.
Which is?
The licensed therapists are specifically required to be diverse and culturally competent.
Wait, really? So the cultural alignment sort of replaces the need for physical presence.
It acts as a psychological bridge. Like, yes, a screen is a physical barrier, but a lack of shared cultural understanding or a lack of representation is a much larger psychological barrier.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Right. Think about the mechanics of typical therapy. You spend the first month or two just translating your life to the therapist.
Yeah, explaining your whole background.
Exactly. But culturally competent care means a therapist recognizing specific neighborhood stressors or understanding nuanced family expectations or even just picking up on local slang without the student having to stop and explain their entire lived experience.
So they basically skip the whole translation phase.
Precisely. When a student logs on and sees a therapist who instinctively understands their community dynamics, that trust and that human connection can be established incredibly quickly, even through a monitor.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that cultural competency basically becomes the technology that bridges the digital gap.
Okay, let's play out the logistics of this during a typical school day, because I'm trying to picture it. A kid is having a crisis, they go to the counselor's office, they get set up in a private pod or a room, open a laptop, and because of this network, within an hour, they're talking to someone who actually understands their background.
Right.
That immediate access puts out the immediate fire at, say, 10 a.m. But the bell rings at 3 p.m., and that kid goes right back out the front doors.
Which brings us to the fundamental flaw of isolated school counseling.
Yeah.
You simply cannot treat a child in a vacuum.
And the program seems heavily built around this exact idea.
Yeah.
I mean, their core philosophy explicitly states that when a student is struggling, the whole family feels it.
Oh, 100%.
And they say lasting change only happens when families and schools work together. So mental space actually doesn't stop at the student.
Right, they expand it.
Yeah, if a school partners with them, the entire family gets access to the network.
Wow.
We're talking family counseling sessions, parent education workshops, and direct home-to-school communication support. And they're also running staff wellness programs and cultural competency training for the teachers themselves.
If we look at this through the lens of systems theory and psychology,
Okay, lay it on me.
well, treating a child in isolation is often just treating a symptom of a larger environmental issue. The child is just one component of a larger ecosystem.
The family unit and the school environment.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me because it's like fixing a leaky pipe, but then also making sure the entire house's plumbing and the city's water pressure are working together so it doesn't just burst again tomorrow.
That's exactly it. Because if you teach a student deep breathing and coping mechanisms via teletherapy at noon,
Right.
but then you send them back into a highly stressed, chaotic household at 4 p.m., or a banned-out classroom the next morning where the teacher just doesn't understand those mechanisms,
The progress just unravels instantly.
instantly, the environment just overrides the therapy. By treating the whole ecosystem, providing parent workshops at home and staff wellness in the building, you are creating a reinforced safety net.
So you are systematically targeting the burnout on both ends. Because teachers aren't trained therapists, but we often force them to act like it when a student acts out in class.
We really do, and it's not fair to them.
Not at all. Giving them a dedicated mental health team to tap into takes a massive weight off their shoulders.
And giving parents the vocabulary to talk to their kids builds resilience at home, too.
Mm.
You are surrounding the student with an environment that actively supports their mental health.
Instead of just pulling them out of a math class for 45 minutes a week.
Right, giving them a worksheet on feelings and just hoping for the best.
But wait, if you're bringing the family into this, you're immediately hit a massive wall.
Oh, the privacy issue.
Yes. How does a program balance the delicate privacy of a struggling student with the goal of educating and involving their parents?
It's tricky.
Because, let's be honest, sometimes the family dynamic is the root cause of the student's anxiety. You can't just hand a parent a transcript of what their teenager said in therapy.
No, absolutely not. That is the tightrope walk of integrated care. How do you maintain a safe, strictly confidential space for a teenager to speak freely while simultaneously running parent education workshops?
Yeah, how do they do it?
The mechanism here relies entirely on the ethical codes binding the licensed therapists.
So they have like an ethical firewall in place.
Right. The goal of family inclusion isn't about sharing the student's secrets. It's about systemic maintenance.
Okay.
For example, the therapist might notice a pattern of anxiety related to academic pressure. Without breaking confidentiality, the program can offer parent workshops specifically focused on healthy academic communication or, managing household stress.
Oh, I see.
You are training the parents to raise the baseline emotional intelligence of the entire household, rather than just relaying specific grievances from the child.
But still, you're mixing a child's medical secrets with their educational environment and then pulling their parents into the fold. From an administrative standpoint, this sounds like an absolute legal nightmare for a public school to manage.
It is a massive vulnerability,
Yeah,
which is exactly why schools historically haven't done it.
that makes sense.
And it's why a third-party plug-and-play solution like this is currently gaining so much traction.
Okay, let's look at the administrative backbone of this because the logistics of care here are just intense.
Yeah, they are.
First, MentalSpace operates as both HIPAA and FERPA compliant.
Crucial.
And second, the entire reason this is accelerating in Georgia right now is a specific legislative urgency. It's this HB 268 compliance support.
Right.
And that has a hard, non-negotiable deadline of July 2026.
Yeah, the intersection of HIPAA and FERPA is notoriously complicated.
I can imagine.
HIPAA protects your healthcare data, obviously, but FERPA protects a student's educational records.
It sounds like trying to operate a bank inside a casino.
That is a brilliant way to frame it.
You have two completely different sets of massive federal security rules trying to govern the exact same floor space. And a school principal is somehow supposed to act as the compliance officer for both.
Exactly. When a therapist is operating inside a school system,
Yeah.
the lines between what constitutes a medical record and what is an educational record become incredibly blurred.
Yeah.
A principal simply doesn't have the legal infrastructure to navigate that minefield. So a service that arrives and says, hey, we absorb the liability, we handle both HIPAA and FERPA natively, well, that's offering a massive relief valve.
But the real forcing function here is that July 2026 deadline for HB 268.
Yes, the looming deadline.
We need to actually explain what that mandate does to a school because it completely changes their motivation.
HB 268 is part of a broader legislative trend, actually. It's pushing schools to be accountable for student mental health.
Okay.
Historically, if a student was highly disruptive due to, say, underlying trauma, the school's primary tool was suspension. It was a strictly disciplinary framework.
Right. Just get them out of the classroom.
Exactly. But mandates like HB 268 force schools to actively monitor, support, and provide actionable mental health frameworks for these students. It turns mental well-being from a nice-to-have initiative into a hard administrative and legal requirement.
So it means the state is basically telling public schools they are now legally responsible for building the mental fire escape.
Yes,
And they have until July 2026 to prove it's actually functional.
exactly. And most schools do not have the internal infrastructure, the budget, or the personnel to build that fire escape from scratch.
Oh, definitely not.
Administrators are under intense pressure. They are desperate for a comprehensive solution that just makes them legally compliant overnight.
So MentalSpace is acting as a necessary bilingual translator here.
That's exactly what they're doing.
They speak the legal language of healthcare for HOPA, and they speak the legal language of education for FERPA and this HB 268 mandate.
Right.
Which allows the school leadership to just focus on keeping the doors open.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about what happens when those doors stay open, because the outcomes listed in these notes are fascinating.
They really are striking.
They claim an 89% improvement in attendance, a 92% reduction in anxiety, and an 85% family satisfaction rate.
You really cannot look at those health metrics and those academic metrics in isolation. They are intrinsically linked.
Because treating the anxiety is essentially the ultimate attendance strategy.
It is. A student who is crippled by a panic disorder or severe depression simply cannot learn. In many cases, they can't even bring themselves to walk out their front door.
Right.
The traditional approach would penalize that student for truancy, but this model treats the underlying clinical issue, and the natural byproduct is that the student actually shows up to class.
It's a slightly cynical reality, though, right?
What do you mean?
Well, 89% improved attendance is a massive number for an administrator.
Oh, absolutely.
Because administrators speak the language of metrics, daily seat counts, and state funding that is directly tied to that attendance, are we basically hacking the administrative desire for funding and regulatory compliance to accidentally deliver human care?
I mean, it is a profoundly pragmatic way to view the system, but yes. Improved attendance and hitting that HB 268 compliance deadline are absolutely the primary selling points for a superintendent.
Right.
They have a bureaucratic job to do. But I would argue that those metrics basically act as a Trojan horse.
The bureaucracy accidentally doing something incredibly human.
Exactly. If the promise of better attendance numbers and avoiding state penalties is what convinces an administrator to allow a comprehensive, family-inclusive mental health clinic to set up shop inside their school,
Yeah.
well, the end result is still that vulnerable students and their families receive zero-cost, same-day, culturally competent therapy.
It's a great point.
The entry point might be entirely bureaucratic, but the outcome fundamentally changes lives.
What we are watching is a massive systemic failure. Like, the inability of the traditional medical system to reach vulnerable kids
Right.
being actively solved by exploiting the regulatory panic of the public school system.
It is a structural workaround that actually benefits the end user in a huge way.
Incredible. Well, to bring this deep dive to a close, the shift we are analyzing here today is massive.
Huge.
We are moving away from a model where a lone guidance counselor tries to patch up a crisis after the fact toward a proactive, legally compliant infrastructure that pulls the entire family into the fold.
Yeah.
For anyone listening who wants to look at the mechanics of this program themselves, the contact information provided in our notes is their website, MentalSpaceSchool.com, and their direct email is mentalspaceschool@sheechtherapy.com.
As we wrap up, I do want to leave you with a broader implication to consider.
Oh, definitely.
If we are moving toward a reality where public schools successfully transform into the primary access hubs for an entire family's mental health care, where parents, staff, and students all rely on the school's infrastructure for their well-being, how does that permanently redefine the fundamental responsibility of the education system in our society?
Wow.
Are public schools simply places of academic learning anymore? Or are we watching them actively evolve into the new centers of community public health?
It really makes you wonder what the public school of the future looks like. Maybe one day the emotional health systems in our schools will be just as visible, just as practiced, and just as deeply ingrained in the architecture of our communities as the fire drill. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.